Hi and welcome back to my channel, and also welcome to my Valentine's Crime Day video. I have announced that I'm going to upload one special video right on Valentine's, and here we are. Today we're going through the story of Sally McNeil and how domestic abuse can lead to a Valentine's Day massacre. I'm pretty sure a few of you already know who Sally McNeil is, but I don't want to give away too much. The trigger warnings for today's case are physical, emotional and sexual abuse, drug abuse, reflection of body image issues, mention of child abuse and murder. So without any further ado, let's get on to the video. Sally Dempsey was born on the 13th of September in 1960 in Allentown in Pennsylvania, where she grew up in a very violent household. It's said that her father drank way too much and that he not only abused Sally's mom but also Sally. Once Sally turned 3 years old, her mother actually remarried, and soon Sally got herself two half-siblings by the name of Judy and Jill. And according to Sally, her stepfather didn't really like her all that much. He would basically treat his biological children way better than Sally. And even though that now Sally was kind of in a new family, the abuse stayed the same. Her stepfather would abuse her as well as her mother. So at a very young age, Sally is exposed to violence around her. And not knowing anything different, she thought that it was the norm for every household to be like. There was also a lot of racism going on, but despite what everyone around her was saying, Sally never really cared for somebody's skin color. In fact, one of her best friends was a black girl. Sally went to the Deer Reef High School in Allentown, and she was very much into sports. She was in the school's swimming, diving, track and fields team, where she was excelling. After her graduation, Sally decided to enroll in East Stroudsburg University in Pennsylvania. Her dream was to become a gym's teacher, but after 3 years, Sally unfortunately couldn't afford to pay for her education, and so she had to drop out of college. So now that Sally had dropped out of college, she started to think about a new career path. Eventually, she decides to follow in her uncle and brother's shoes and join the U.S. Marine Corps, where she would be stationed at Camp Pendleton. After a while, she had earned her rank as sergeant, and while Sally was in the military, she was working there as a cook. In Paris Island, Sally met her first husband, Anthony Loaders. They had a strong connection with each other and started dating pretty much right from the get-go. And soon into the relationship, they got married. But their marriage quickly started to become very abusive. And once Sally was transferred back to Camp Pendleton, Sally filed for divorce and also received, I believe, full custody of her two children, Shanita and John. So now that Sally was single again, she dedicated her free time to her children and also her body image. She was very strong and in great physical condition. So one day her superior suggested to her that she should participate in competitive competition, which makes perfect sense if you think about it. I mean, Sally already being in the Marine and already being in very good physical condition, why not at least give it a try? So on Valentine's Day in 1987, Sally competed in the NPC US Armed Service Physics and Championship, where she actually managed to reach 4th place. And it was the same year where Sally would meet a man called Ray McNeil. Ray McNeil was born the 17th of December in 1964. His mother gave him up when he was still a baby, so Ray was raised in poverty by his aunt. It is said that the house they lived in had exposed wood planks everywhere and was filled with cockroaches. There was also another older boy living in the house with Ray, and it's said that this boy would make Ray perform sexual acts on him. So you can see that both of them weren't necessarily raised in a safe and sound environment. They got introduced to one another through a mutual friend, and Sally would describe their first meeting as lust at first sight. She was immediately impressed by the way that Ray looked, and approximately 2 months into them knowing each other, they had gotten married. In 1990, Sally again competed in the US Armed Service Championships, and this time managed to win the first place in the middleweight division. Ray would actually end up winning his class as well, and that's when they became the first ever husband and wife couple in the NCP to win their respective category. They bonded over their shared interests, and Ray over time would become kind of as a father figure for Sally's children. But her dream of breaking this abusive cycle would soon come crashing down on her. According to Sally, Ray first started to abuse her 3 days into their marriage. There was one incident where Ray had punched Sally in her face and broke her nose. She went to her sergeant and also to get checked out, where Sally would report Ray, and he was arrested but released soon after. And once he was out, he assaulted Sally even worse. And Sally over time would turn into an abusive person herself. Now, I personally don't think that Sally wanted to become this abusive person, but going from an abusive household to an abusive partnership into the next abusive partnership, she may have felt like this was her only way of protecting herself. In 1990, Sally was actually stripped from the rank of sergeant because Sally had anger outbursts that the Marine did not condone to. Sally and her family would eventually move to Oceanside, California, and with her and her husband in the bodybuilding scene and 2 kids that needed to be taken care of, Sally realized that she could earn a lot of money with a muscular body. Around the time, muscular women were looked down upon, but there were still people who worshipped such women. Stenographia, I believe, is the correct term. So basically, you watch someone train, so you can kind of get an idea of how it may look, and this can also lead into sexual desire. Sally was introduced to a man called Bill Wick. Bill was a video producer and offered to train Sally so that she could participate in his movies where physically strong women would wrestle weaker men. Sally would also go on and create her own production, which is called Top Secret Production. She was now producing her own movies and was actually able to double her profit, because not only was she now wrestling men that would pay her to do so, now that she was actually producing it herself, she was able to sell it as well. While those videos had a very amateur feel to it, they still sold rather well, considering there was a big market of men out there interested in such topics, and not many, let's call them producers, that would cover this kind of topic. With her production being born, that is also how Killer Sally came to life. Maybe a little too literally in hindsight. In 1990, Sally was actually arrested because she was threatening her ex-husband Anthony with a gun and even smashed one of his car's windows with a metal bar. But this wasn't her first run-in with the law, because she had previously assaulted a mailman because he touched her son. So you can see that Sally wasn't all that innocent either. While she was being abused at home by Ray, she also started to develop a very angry side to her. In 1991, Ray left the Marine Corps because he wanted to put sole focus on his bodybuilding career. And in order to get the most out of his body, Ray started increasing his steroid usage, which resulted in him being even more violent and abusive at home. Sometimes he would come home and abuse one of his children, while the other sibling had actually to watch the abuse and kind of wait their turn. And even though Sally was very well aware that those steroids were causing an even bigger problem in her marriage, she would still go out of her way to go to Tijuana, Mexico, to purchase more steroids. She even took her children with her because she probably thought that a car with 2 little children was less likely to be checked at the US border. Border Patrol is probably not going to investigate your car that much, but just imagine that something did indeed happen. Those two children would be stuck in Mexico without any parent there. So it was definitely a very, very dangerous game that Sally was playing. And the type of steroids that Ray was using are known to cause severe mood swings. So for somebody who already had a tendency of violence, this obviously made it even worse. Even though both Ray and Sally participated in bodybuilding competition, they focused more on Ray's career, since back then when women's bodybuilding was just coming up and the money that men could make was way higher than what women could make at the time. Also, the majority of the food would go to Ray as well. He would eat what he needed for his diet, and Sally and the kids would only get to have whatever was left when he was finished. And from the sport aspect, I totally understand how Ray had to optimize his diet in order to maximize physical gains. But once your family and children are suffering from the lack of food, that's probably where you should draw the line and think, okay, what exactly am I doing here? But despite the abuse at home, Ray's career started to gain traction in 1991. He won at the heavyweight and overall class at the NPC California Championships. He then went on to win the IFBB North American Championship in the same year, which was the final step for his amateur career to become a professional. As for Sally, she was now also starting to get more successful in her career. In 1991, she placed 5th in the lightweight division on the Junior USA Championship. After only placing 13th at the NPC National Championship, she ended up 4th place at Palm Springs Classic. In 1992, she competed at the Junior USA Championships again, where she placed 2nd but only moved up from 13th to 12th at the NPC Championships. Just like Ray, she was trying to turn professional, but only finished 9th place at the 1992 IFBB North Americans. And afterwards ended her season with a 5th place at the NPC USA Championships before leaving the Marines shortly afterwards. In 1993, Ray had been improving his physiques for 2 years now, before he felt ready to compete at the 1993 Mr. Olympia contest. Although he went in with high expectations, he only placed 15th out of 22 competitors. To the outside world, it looked like he was taking it fairly well. When behind closed doors, Sally and the kids were the ones to feel his anger and disappointment. And for Sally, not only has she not been able to enhance her physique like she intended to, she would also soon find out that Ray wasn't all that faithful to her. There was one time at the NPC show where Sally would even get physical with another contestant because she believed that she had been flirting with her husband. She threw this woman to the ground, and when later asked, she said that her motive was to dismember her to the point where no man would ever want to look at her again. Ray would also start to work as a bouncer at a nightclub, and one night while being on shift, Ray had gotten into an altercation where he stuck his finger through another man's eyes, blinding him completely. When asked about this incident, Ray said that he needed to do it in order to protect himself. It was also around the time where one of Sally's competitors would end up losing her life due to domestic violence. She was strangled to death, which was a pretty similar pattern that Sally would endure almost daily. And I can see how that scared Sally to death. It was basically the same behavior that she was used to from Ray, so it may have been only a matter of time until she would have suffered the same fate. One time the police had to be called because Sally pulled a shotgun on Ray, which resulted in her getting pepper sprayed by the police. And she would continue to get the attention of the police officers on her. In 1993, she started a fight with a bouncer because she was at the club and she was dancing on the table. And when this bouncer confronted her, she kicked the man in his face multiple times. And once the police arrived, she threatened to kill the officers. So yeah, like I've mentioned, Sally had her fair share of anger issues as well. So she wasn't necessarily like an angel-like person. In 1994, her suspension came to an end, and Sally decided to try her luck once more in competing and managed to get 5th place again at the US Championships. Sally and Ray had actually come to terms that it would be in Sally's best interest if Ray started to train her, which in general sounds like a good idea. Ray had more experience and the extra bonding time could help their relationship, or so they thought. And the frustration of both Sally as well as Ray just kept adding up and would eventually come crashing down on both of them. Ray was having an affair behind Sally's back with a woman called Marion Myers, who he apparently met at Golden Gyms. According to one of Ray's close friends, a man called Wayne, he confessed to him that he was very, very smitten with Marion and that he even thought about leaving his wife Sally so that he could properly start a relationship with Marion. And now we're getting to the tragic events of today's case. On the 14th of February in 1995, so on Valentine's Day, Sally would find out about the affair of her husband. Around 9:15, Ray had returned from his Valentine's date, if you will, but he had gone on a date with Marion. Once Ray returned, a devastated and furious Sally was just waiting to confront her cheating husband, and they began to argue, and at one point Sally started to make fun of Ray's appearance, which was a very, very sensible subject for Ray. According to Sally, that's when Ray had slapped her and threw her on the ground. So now they're physically fighting with each other. Sally eventually managed to break free and runs into the bedroom where they kept their shotgun. Mind you, the same shotgun that Sally had previously pulled on Ray, and the same shotgun that she had previously told him that she would use against him if the violence wouldn't stop. She loaded the gun and went back to the kitchen where Ray started to cook his food. Sally tells Ray to immediately leave their apartment, but Ray wouldn't hear any of it. And according to Sally, that's when he started to make his way towards her, and that's when she shot him twice. Once in his abdomen and one directly in his face. Sally immediately called 911 to get an ambulance for Ray. After 911 was informed, Sally hands the gun over to a neighbor to show that she is no threat to anyone. Once the ambulance arrived, they rushed Ray straight to the hospital. But unfortunately, Ray McNeil would end up losing his life one day after being shot. So now it was a murder case. Sally was brought in for investigation where she would tell police officers that Ray was abusing her and that it was self-defense. Once the news broke, the whole bodybuilding industry was just shocked. Once the trial began, Sally's lawyer would pledge to not guilty due to self-defense and her having a history of domestic violence. Her attorney leaned on the idea that Sally was a battered woman, and they did everything in their power to describe what kind of abuse Sally went through. They even had Sally stop training and made her wear baggy clothes in order for her to look more fragile. Sally actually testified because she wanted to tell what had happened from her perspective. She talked about the years of abuse and trauma that she went through, and while it seemed like a good idea at the time, eventually it just backfired on her. The prosecutor was very successful at getting convictions, and Sally having a military background also didn't really help that much. So, yeah, Sally being conditioned to not show any kind of emotions certainly didn't make things better for her either. The prosecutor also highlighted her violent behavior in the past, proving that she was not as innocent as they wanted Sally to be portrayed. The fact that there was video footage of her wrestling men for money and calling herself Killer Sally wasn't really helpful either. Basically, everything that she had done in her past was now being used against her. Sally's version of the incident was also questionable. In her story, she said that she loaded one round into the shotgun. However, she shot Ray twice where he stood. When investigating the crime scene, the police also found a slingshot in the bedroom as well. This basically means that the shotgun had been cleared in the bedroom. The blood splatter analyst also determined that by the angle of the blood splatters found, Ray was probably on the ground when at least one of the bullets hit him. So he wasn't even standing at this point anymore. Basically, her story didn't quite match up with the evidence that were found at the crime place. The final nail in the coffin was that there was no DNA of Ray found on Sally. She claimed that Ray had assaulted her on that night and even scratched her on her neck while choking her. Her daughter Shantina even confirmed that there were scratches on her mother, but it was never proven that it was because of Ray. In March of 1969, Sally McNeil was convinced of second-degree murder and sentenced to 19 years in prison. During her time in prison, she made several requests of parole, which were all denied. And after serving 25 years, she was released in prison of 2020. With her kids now all grown up and having their own life, Sally didn't really have anywhere to go to, so she was introduced to a veterans transitional center. This is also where she would meet her current husband, North Lead Stewart, and they would go on to move to North California to settle down. She also began reconnecting with her children and also started to build a relationship with now her grandchildren. So Sally McNeil is out and about and trying to find her way back into society. And that is it for the special Valentine's Day case. We're still in the midst of February, so there are still a couple of interesting cases coming up. As always, let me know which case you would like to see me cover in the future, and also subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. I hope I see you all in my next video. Bye!